I'm Dan Olsen. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Tonight at Lean Product Meetup, we hosted two awesome speakers from UserTesting, Marieke and McCloskey, who's the director of research there, and Brian Tran, who's the director of product. And they shared some awesome advice with us about how UserTesting, a company I'm sure a lot of you have heard of, how they organize their product team and how they work together with the quantitative and qualitative researchers, basically data scientists and the UX researchers, to really apply a bunch of different methodologies to make better product decisions. And they shared a lot of specific examples and a lot of specific frameworks. So I think you're really going to enjoy it. I actually learned a couple new frameworks that I didn't know about, and a lot of people here were talking about some new frameworks that they learned. So if you enjoy the video, please be sure to like it, subscribe to the channel so that you get notified when we publish other great speakers like these today. But I hope you enjoy the video. Thanks.
So thank you for taking the time to come and join and learn and hear what we have to say. First off, you've probably noticed a couple things that are a little bit different than usual. One is that there's two of us. So as Dan mentions, I think this is the first time where this has actually happened. And there's actually a reason for that. And kind of want to share the story of how this actually happened, because there's reason for it. So Dan reached out to Marieke because Marieke is known for her amazing talks and has given similar talks to this one. And Dan thought it'd be super valuable to actually go and give this talk. But the things that we're going to talk about today, as far as how we build better products and how you build great products at UserTesting, one of the critical things is how there is collaboration between research and product management. So to really live and breathe that, she actually invited me to join, and we're actually going to do that here and now. So the second one about that is a little bit different is we actually changed the name. So you probably saw on the website, the title is Make Better Product Decisions by using quantitative and qualitative data. In truth, we actually don't like the terms quantitative and qualitative data. We actually view it as just data that helps us make better product decisions, supercharged by human insights. But you'll still learn about how to use both quantitative and qualitative data. We didn't trick you. A little bit about ourselves. As Dan mentioned, director of product at UserTesting. Before that, have been at different companies at all various stages. So as early as seed stage startups, all the way up to companies like Intuit, and across different domains like finance, healthcare, and B2B. And what that is, the privilege of being in all those different roles, I got to see so many different ways of building great product. And really fundamentally, the things that we're going to talk about today, building great product, there's fundamentally these core concepts that I'm going to talk about today. Do you want to give? Yep. Is your mic on?
Fix that now.
Cool.
So I'm originally Dutch, which is why my name is spelled a little funny, but I've been in California 10 years, hitting my 10-year anniversary in California. I've been at UserTesting a little over 4 years and built our internal research team. I actually came in to lead professional services, and one of the best kept secrets at UserTesting is that we didn't have people doing research on our product. We would outsource it from our services org. And so some of the things that I'll share today is how we've built this research team and what we're doing a little differently, combining both qualitative and quantitative research. I'm a qualitative UX researcher, so a lot of the quant stuff is outside of my wheelhouse. The other part of the success of sort of what we've built at UserTesting is the partnership with product management, which we'll also get into in more detail.
Cool.
Oh no.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I know. It's running.
Okay, so quick walkthrough of what we're going to talk about today. First, going to talk about our philosophy and what makes a great product. As Marieke mentioned, we're going to share a little bit about our unique org structure at UserTesting and how that helps us build great product. Same with our process, why those two things matter, including some use cases of both the uniqueness of the org structure and the process in building great products at UserTesting, and then do some Q&A. So I was going to talk a little bit about UserTesting, but it sounds like most of you know what UserTesting is, so thank you for knowing. But for those of you who don't know, really the crux of what we do is we help companies build greater products and great experiences by connecting you to your target customer as fast as possible, basically providing in-the-moment human insights, again, accessed by the right time, by the right team in the right time. So how do we do that? It's through what we call the Human Insights platform. So independent of what team you are on, whether you're product, marketing, UX research, design, we connect you to your target customer to allow you to understand and empathize with your target customer, gain those critical insights to learn more about your customer and make decisions, and then go ahead and actually share those insights with your team, execs, the rest of your company, so that everyone understands and deeply empathizes with your customer. So the things that we focus on when we are building user testing is around more teams, so empowering every team to be connected with their customer. Again, targeting your exact customers, empathizing with any experience, whether it's mobile, IoT, what have you, gaining those insights and then sharing. So why do we do this? Because we believe that all teams should be able to see, hear, and talk to their customers, to empathize and understand their perspectives, and gain fast feedback and insights to make decisions at the speed of business today. So if this is what we really believe, and this is what we want all companies and teams to be able to do, then it's super important for us, the employees at UserTesting, to live and breathe that as well. And that's why we're basically here to talk about how we do that. So what makes a great product? This is our boy, Jeff Bezos. Good inventors and designers deeply understand their customer. They study and understand many anecdotes rather than only the averages you'll find on surveys. So what we firmly believe is that in order to build great products, you have to deeply understand your customer. And what I've seen is that most of us are familiar with like the quantitative methods. So how many usage track, do event tracking, or do A/B testing? A lot. And I feel like we're starting to forget to actually just go and talk to our customers. And there's one is not better than the other. It's really about mixing those two things together, and that's when the magic happens. Okay, so how do you go about and actually build a great product? And I always go back to this if you haven't seen this before. There's really three criteria that all amazing products fit in or fulfill. One is desirable. Is your product something that customers actually really need? Is it viable? Does it make business sense? And is it feasible? Can you actually go and build it? And with that, how do you go about and actually answer those three questions? Is it desirable? Is it viable? Is it feasible? It's really hard. Two critical things that we've learned, throughout our experiences is the people, obviously, and the org and how you are structured, and the process, how you all work together. So we're going to go ahead and break down each of these and talk about what we think.
I have the clicker. Yeah, do you want to swap?
Sure.
Yeah. So I want to talk about org structure, mainly because of this research team we've built and why we've combined different skill sets together. A little bit about our leadership team before Brian goes into the our product development process. So we have an SVP of product and engineering. This is our org chart, super exciting. Reporting to him, which is a little different, is maybe it's a VP of engineering and then a VP of product and design. Chris Abad is one of the podcast guests that Dan talked to. He has a design background, now leads also our product org, and just that difference has actually been transformative for us because reporting to Chris are 2 design managers, 2 research leads, myself and our head of data science, and 2 directors of product, Brian and our colleague Tanya. And so we each have, there's obviously a giant engineering org that I haven't visualized. And we have a whole design team. We actually have 2 design teams that report up into those design managers. We have, I don't even know how many PMs anymore.
7
PMs that report into our 2 directors of product. And then the team that our research team is UX research and data science. Before I go into that, this layer of this leads group, we actually call it our product leads group. We have weekly meetings, strategy sessions, and the fact that we work at that level sort of outside of our typical product development process, but what's happening in our department, what are the resources that are needed, or what questions do we have, happens at that layer that feels really special and has really helped us allocate resources on projects that are necessary, but also have a conversation that's a little bit higher level in what are our unknowns, what are the big opportunities, what do we tackle next? So most companies, UX research is way over there in a org chart, and data science is on the other side, sometimes different buildings, and really hard to access each other. Mostly it's UX research that wants the data scientists. We're working on convincing data scientists that they need UX researchers. But what the vision Chris Abad had, actually based on an article that Spotify came out with, they've done it, Airbnb does this too, but they talked about how they've put data science and UX research together because you need both kinds of insights and skill set to really uncover interesting insights about your customers, trends about what you're seeing in the data. So we formed one team that we call Product Insights. That is both, there's 8 of us now, including our data engineer. So she's the one that helps us clean up our data so we can actually do something with it. But we have data scientists, UX researchers, and we are a centralized team, but also embed on different squads. So the way we work, which maybe will come up a little bit when we talk about our process, is that we have PM, design lead, tech lead, depending on the size of the project, a number of engineers. And we will actually embed a data scientist and a UX researcher on those projects, not every project. And so the benefit of us still being a centralized team is that we are able to support those squads, but also tackle strategic research. And so one of the big goals that we have on our team, it's kind of related to how we have this leads group that's design, PM, and research. But what are the questions well before we know that we're going to go solve this problem or tackle even this space? We know that there's big unknowns. Especially for us, this gets super meta. Whenever I talk about our team and the research, we're researching how people do research and user testing. But we know that people use a whole bunch of tools, software, they're in stuff before they log into user testing. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into the analysis, what happens once you get those videos back and you're trying to gain that empathy and get those insights. And those are bigger unknowns because we don't know what's happening in the product. And so thinking about strategic opportunities, should we go do some research that's outside the realm of what we see in our product or outside of a known problem area? Maybe it's a new market that we want to get into. So we focus a lot on that kind of foundational research. And then the other thing that we pretty much from the start of building this team almost 2 years ago now. It'll be early, like February, it'll be 2 years. We didn't want to become a blocker to projects. So we didn't want PMs to ever have to be like, oh, well, I've like tried to get help from product insights and I can, and now I can't move forward. Or we didn't want designers to be like, oh no, like design has to wait because I can't get a researcher to help prototype test this design. So how can we help create new processes, tools, templates? Like how can we make research more efficient? Research ops is a cool new hot term that we're also trying to figure out what that means for us. Like how do we operationalize research? How do we make it possible for people to do research? And we firmly at the company, this also kind of alludes to what Brian was saying about like user testing and the company we are, and that we have to practice what we preach. We do believe that everyone should be able to do research. And I do not know what's going on with my computer. That's okay. And so we want to empower PMs to get insights, designers to get insights, marketers at the company, really anyone. Like I just had a meeting last week with someone in HR on how they could leverage user testing to get insights. You had to like sort of figure out where the boundary is of what's appropriate to get recorded or not, what kind of questions you should ask employees. But even a fun one that we thought of is how could we, there's a lot of like office space questions going on at user testing. We have an office here in Mountain View, super close by. We have an office in San Francisco and in Atlanta. And there's a lot of like, whose office is better and cooler? And what do people need in their office space? And that is a great way to like, let's have people record what their desk setup is like and talk about what they like in their office space. You even get people to give feedback on the snacks. We thought about ways that we could bring human insights to our HR department. So there's some stuff that has to happen, like us centralizing, we can organize our research efforts, but then we want to empower the teams, like our squad, so our PMs and designers and tech leads to move fast and to get the insights that they need, both like when it comes to usage data questions, like how many of our customers have done XYZ, or hey, we need to talk to some customers, like getting access to those customers. The coolest thing about how we work is how we tackle problems. Sometimes it's super obvious who's going to answer a question. Like, I need to go to data scientist. I have this question for them. I know it's going to be them. They're going to have the answer. Sometimes it's super obvious that it's going to be one of the UX researchers. But what we prefer, even in those situations where it's super obvious, to have the question come to sort of generically product insights, not in a we don't have a form that you have to fill out to submit a request to talk to product insights. We're still small enough. But the idea that like the question is posed either to the researcher, the UX researcher and data scientists that are embedded in your project, or to the like team as a whole. And then we decide how we answer that question. And we actually usually kind of cycle through a bunch of like, come to the data scientist and the UX researcher and back to the data scientist, and sort of like, we might have to go a little bit back and forth to see who has the better data, but that's not how we talk to each other. Who's best at answering this question? Maybe we actually should answer this question. And so a lot of like what Brian will talk about in our product process and being able to combine qualitative and quantitative data methods is because we are set up this way, where we have these skill set talking to each other on a daily basis, working together a lot. And then like that work and that cycling back and forth is what spits out interesting insights. I just super briefly wanted to share an example of a project where we've done that on before Brian delves into the different stages in our product development process and shares examples from studies that we've done at user testing. We really like Teresa Torres's opportunity solution tree as a framework for thinking about what metric matters, what KPI to the company matters to, like, how can we all rally behind that same metric, and what outcome is going to have a business impact? What's the important metric for us to drive? And then to think really broad about problems that our users have that if we solve them, will drive that metric. And then think about the solution. So the opportunity boxes, those green boxes, can be also thought of as user needs or user problems. What really helps us with this framework is to think really broad. To do this and put this together, like, it's even helpful just as a brainstorming exercise, like what might that be? But to really know which metrics matter to the company, you kind of need a data scientist to do, if you're a SaaS business like us, retention analysis. So our customers buy an annual subscription to user testing, and so we want people to renew. So what what predicts that renewal, like what behavior in our product, what activities should we see in our accounts that will drive that renewal. One of the things we found, the retention analysis last year showed us that if our customers, basically we can get accounts to watch 5 videos in a month, then they're considered engaged and healthy, and that is a really good indicator of renewal. So that's our desired outcome, which the data scientists helped us with. But these are people in these accounts that have to watch those videos. And so where we come in as the UX research team is then actually understanding who they are, talking to the account managers to figure out what is the org structure of that company, what are the roles of these people. And so, and we did that a little bit at a high level, sort of what can we, like for the department, do ahead of time. And then now we're tackling different components of this on squads and digging really deep into that. Okay.
Okay.
It's you.
So Marieke described a lot. And now what does this actually look like from a process standpoint? And every company or every product team has their product development process. And this one's ours. It's when you compare different product development processes, like this is relatively standard. You go and understand your customers. You then go and try to build something that's going to solve their needs, or you design it, and then you go plan and figure out how you're actually going to go build it. You then go build it, and then you then try to optimize what you've built. And within each of these phases, generally, like these activities happen. The most critical one is understanding what your customers actually need, doing a bit of competitive analysis to make sure which of those needs are going to be the differentiators, and then defining what is the value and the user benefit, the core value of your product. During the solve phase is when you actually define what those features are that solve those needs. You've probably got some kind of prototype that actually is a vision of what it is that you are going to build. And then you got to figure out how much you're going to price that product. When you get into planning, what we do at user testing is we do what we call milestone planning. That basically means you break down what it is that you're going to build into bite-sized chunks. Each of those chunks are provide some form of customer value. And that's like a really hard criteria for what a milestone is. And the reason why you do that is because what you're always trying to do is get to customer value as soon as possible. So by breaking it down into small milestones, you're able to quickly learn from customers as quickly as possible. And then you've got that roadmap of what timing looks like for all those milestones. Once you've built it, we normally have like a beta where we invite customers to go and test that feature and give feedback, either beta or a labs. And then once you've finally built it and gone GA is when you are still, again, continually getting customer feedback, both quantitatively and qualitatively to optimize and tweak your product. This doesn't happen in solo. This happens a lot. You're building a feature. You're already thinking about what the next feature is after that. You've got multiple teams doing this. So this is happening over and over and over again. So what that really means, or what that looks like in reality, is all of those activities on top are happening a lot every single day. And how do you actually go and do those activities? There's so many different methods, both in the quant and the qual space. So how do you figure out what are the different things that you need to do to actually successfully fulfill all of those activities above? Today, we chose a few examples that for me are near and dear to my heart, and I think are pretty useful and interesting. The first, again, is the customer needs. And the example that I'm going to give is combining surveys, which one can consider being quant, and interviews. to really learn what it is that are those core unmet needs for your customers. So again, there's a bunch of different ways, frameworks, methods. Dan's just laughing. Oh, cool. Yeah. You might have to send some more to other people too later. Yeah. Just a bunch of different methods, frameworks to uncover those customer needs. The one that we use is called Jobs to be Done, if you've all heard of that. Essentially what it is your target customer is trying to do something. And what you do is you map out what they're trying to do. And during each of those steps, in each of those steps, they've got a list of different needs in order to that they encounter when they go and do the steps in the job. You've got those lists of needs. You can score or prioritize those needs based off of importance and satisfaction. So how important is that need to be fulfilled during that, to perform the job? And then how satisfied are they now with their current solution to fulfill that job? So what you're trying to do most of the time is find the needs that are the most important and least satisfied. And that is generally your underserved market. So this graph here, each of those data points is a user need, and they're mapped along those two axes of importance and satisfaction. Generally, when I do this, that graph is cool, but it's really just data points. And what I always end up asking myself is like, why is that need so important and unsatisfying? That's where you can loop in the qualitative side of things. So we actually use user testing at UserTesting, and one of the capabilities is to get feedback from your target customer remotely and unmoderated. So you don't have to go and recruit your customer and talk to them face to face. You can just say, hey, go find my customer, get them to, and give feedback on their time, and then you get it back instantly, generally within actually an hour, which is pretty cool. So what we've done in the past is we have this survey that asks them to score each of those needs along importance and satisfaction. You do that in a large amount, right? Because you want a lot of people to actually fill out that survey. But you then get a small sampling to actually go take that survey on user testing and actually record themselves taking that survey. And you ask them, as you're taking the survey, talk through why you are scoring it as such. And they'll basically start talking about what they're doing, story of their lives, why it's so painful, all of those things. And what it really means is that you've turned that data point into more of like a living data point. It's not just one single dimension of data. You've got a human element to that data point now. That's super useful when you are trying to share with your team, with execs. Not only do you have like the number side of things, the quantitative side of things, you can actually show a video of a person actually talking about that. And that's how you get your team, execs, everyone at the company to really empathize and understand the customer.
Dan, this is the photo you should send to Tony.
That one? Okay.
Cool. Okay. So here you've gone out of the understand phase. You've got your customer needs. You've got the value prop of how you're going to solve those customer needs. At this point, you might have defined your feature set, got the prototype of your future product, and then now you got to figure out how to price. And I really love the pricing part because it's really hard. So here I'm going to talk about again, combining surveys with concept testing to get a good idea of how you should price your product.
This is also a great example where I, as a qualitative UX researcher, was like really uncomfortable getting into pricing discussions, pricing questions. I actually, with Anthony, one of our other UX researchers on the team today, was talking about how these conversations still make us really nervous, and like, should we be the ones doing this research? Where it's actually the partnership with product management and the nudge to sort of like use our research skills to help answer questions that product managers do feel like they can answer, and also have, like, we sort of met each other halfway, and like, how do we tackle this problem?
Cool. So yeah, it's really hard to ask someone, how much would you pay for this? Because there's just so many variables into why someone would pay for something. So how do you sort of dig deep and get into their psyche around the process of buying? I don't know if you've heard of Van Westendorp. It's actually relatively new for me too, and I've tried it a few times, and it's crazy that it actually works. I can talk about it. So really, like, it's just you ask the customer 4 questions. So you present them like your product, and then you ask them, at what price point does this become too expensive? At what price point does this become or feel too cheap? At what price point does it start to get expensive? And at what price point does this feel like it's a bargain? And what you do is you map out the percentage of people who answered as such, and you get like these 4 intersecting lines of the answers to those 4 questions. And the range of acceptable prices the range of acceptable price is the in between of that leftmost intersection and the rightmost intersection. And we've done this a few times for some of our products, and it actually turns out relatively okay. But again, like, these are just graphs, and those are just graphs. You can't just go and start pricing your product because that's what the graph told you. I'm sorry? Yeah. Oh, do you remember sample size?
We did this with 300 people for one of our products. I don't know what the recommendation is for it.
Yeah. So one of the products where we did this was our competitive benchmarking product. Really quickly, what that product is it allows you to compare your product to your competitors' products and get both quantitative and qualitative data as far as like where you are better or where you actually might be lacking to your competitors. And the way we wanted to get sort of the deeper learning on pricing was we built a super simple landing page. And we had people within our target customer like walk through the landing page. Generally, a landing page, you've got like at the very top your value statement, and then you sort of dive down into the key features and how that key feature is going to solve their needs. And then at the very end is when you show them the actual pricing. The pricing there is determined by what you found in the Van Westendorp. I always love doing this because you always get such amazing comments and feedback when they see the pricing. A lot of the times, before they even actually see the pricing, they've got it already in their head how much they think this thing's going to cost. And when they finally scroll down and see this pricing, they're going to either say like, oh yeah, that's actually what I thought it was. That's kind of cool. Or they'll tell you, what the hell are you thinking? This is crazy. And as they're looking at each of these different tiers, they're talking through like the decision-making process. One of the key important things when you are trying to determine pricing is to know what their budget is. They'll generally talk about, given this, that's way out of my budget, so I've got to go to the lower tier. And then they take a look at these different tiers. What you see down there are sort of the different features within each of those tiers, and they can talk about why they want that feature for that price and start to compare and contrast between the two. So pretty valuable stuff. Okay, third one. You've built your product, huge success, but you can always be better. The optimization. It could be, how do you get better? It could be a small thing. It could be a big feature thing. How do you figure out what it is that you should build next? We're going to talk about analytics and then again combining it with interviews. So what you see here is a segmentation of one of our products called Live Conversation. That product basically connects you to your target customer, and you can talk to them live over video conference. I don't think you have to send this to anybody again. Yeah, okay. Oh, great. So at the very top are basically all the users that have access to our product. And we start to break it down by people who have used the product before and have actually never used the product before. So we're starting to break it down between healthy and unhealthy users. Within those two groups, you can break it down even further. For us, our user testing, there's two sort of main types of tests. There's live conversation, which is like the live face-to-face interviews. And then the other one is the unmoderated, which I described before. So we broke it down by customers who were active in both of them, active in one or the other, and then active in neither. And that's kind of what you see there. And then how unactive are they? For those who have maybe used live conversation before, they might not be monthly active, which is sort of what we're trying to, that's our goal. Or they might have like maybe used it once, but that was like a year ago. So they're really unactive. And you break it down by like how many people are in that group. And what it does is it tells you the opportunity size for all the different segments. And that gives you an idea of like which segments you actually want to go after. So generally you want to go for the ones that are bigger more than smaller.
No, right at the right time. I'll fix it.
Yeah. And then for us, like we have a definition of what unhealthy is. For here, it's the monthly active. Yeah. So, okay, you've identified that group. Then you go out to that group and try to get them to talk to you, basically. So follow-up interviews to really find out why, in this case, they're inactive. That interview, generally, you can basically learn more, right? So here, we've broken it down into the types of different things that you're doing in user testing, whether it is live conversation or different other activities that you could do within user testing. How frequently you do it. You can use your jobs to be done job map to ask them even at that point, like which of those steps are the most painful for you, and then basically going through that same process of uncovering needs for these people. So again, by mixing the quantitative side and the qualitative side, you can point to the specific group of people and then share with people within your team interviews, actual videos and clips of them actually talking about why it's so painful.
This spreadsheet is called a rainbow spreadsheet, which you can send to Tomer Sharon if you wanted to send it to someone. But it's a really helpful way to even make sense of qualitative data, like interviews. And we're playing with a couple different options and ways to do this. It's really, you conduct all these interviews and you just have notes and notes and notes from the interviews and trying to like still structure it. So sort of borrow parts of like thinking thinking like we want to measure, even though we're not making any claims about like statistical difference between people, but still trying to quantify what that experience is like and being able to compare, like, what we're trying to figure out is, are there commonalities within that group? Like, the data scientists help us find these segments, but they only know as much as the usage data tells us, and there's more there that we can't see from how the product is used. And so trying to structure the notes from the interview helps us like see if there's commonalities, trends, like what's the story on why these people aren't using this new product, but they're using our core product a lot. Chi-square. We don't need to for the interviews, or you mean for the analysis? Yeah. We should talk more later. That sounds great. Yeah, one more question. Yes. Oh, what's the P related to the colors? Brian asked me that earlier today too. So good. Different participants. So participant 1, participant 2, participant 3. Yeah, nothing fancy. Yep. And he has, Tomer Sharon has this spreadsheet online that you can use. It's also great for usability testing. We've found a way to use it for interviews to structure it. Yeah. And then this example has us doing the data analysis analytics first and then interviews, but we also frequently will go the other way. I think even the example that I shared with the retention analysis, we did data analysis first. If you're curious, I can share examples. Anthony, sitting here in the front, can share examples of how we've also gone the other way. Like, we might hear something interesting, an interesting tidbit from a customer, and then go back to our data science team and say, is this a thing? Like, do more people do this thing that we didn't, like, we've never heard of that, or, oh, that actually seems really common. Like, how common is that? So it also helps us quantify how common it is.
Cool.
Great. I'll take the clicker. I can stand here.
Okay.
Yeah. So that we shared a little bit about our org structure. We shared about our process. This is how we're trying to make our product better, build new products. It's a lot of information. And it's also, like, because of the company we are trying to bring qualitative data to the world, we're trying to innovate and change how we, like, what our process is like and how we do it, but we're not alone. Our customers are also making this change. And so I wanted to just share a little bit of a couple stories from our customers. We ran a survey earlier this year, and the results from that showed that 75% of the respondents said that they have a hard time making decisions just from the quantitative data alone. Like, just the stats don't actually help them know the why, and all those examples Brian gave, to actually be able to say, I feel confident. A lot of this is also confidence boosting. Like, I know why my analytics is showing this drop off. I know why the survey results are like this. Like, I can explain why we're seeing this trend and this pattern. And this isn't just at UserTesting. This is elsewhere. Nordstrom Rack did a case study with us. They've used UserTesting. They also have a robust analytics team, and they learned that they changed. I do actually want to peek at the number. They saved the company $90,000 a day by making a change to the mobile registration flow, just from new insights that they had gathered that they hadn't been able to see just from their analytics, but by actually watching people go through it. We didn't actually share an example of usability testing, but we could have too, where it's like you can do, this is especially relevant in e-commerce world, like if you're in web optimization and the checkout flow, analytics tells you a whole bunch of stuff, but actually watching people go through it might show you that the reason people are dropping off isn't because they don't like your product, which is actually also helpful to know, but it could be actually something more simple, like what they found, that has really, really big business impact. Walmart Canada, also e-commerce, happens to be e-commerce example, but they saw a 13% increase in revenue by changing just how they show products. And so this is a little bit more like the needs and the pain points and the frustrations that users have that you never get from just looking at the numbers. So it's like people aren't purchasing products because they don't see the images the right way, and they don't see the products that they can't decide whether or not that product is the product for them. They won't buy it online. And something you don't learn from doing a survey or looking at your analytics data. So A lot of what I shared is also like big changes to your org. I mean, would love if there are more research teams like our team, and happy to talk a lot about that and what that would look like. But I don't expect you to go back to your office tomorrow and suggest an org change or a process change. We did want to leave you with just some practical things that we think you could do to start with, to start supercharging your data to get a little bit more of the qualitative insights. So one is maybe bring the people doing data analysis. It doesn't have to be data scientists. If you have product analysts, business analysts, people who have access to some of the usage numbers, bring them together with the people at your company who are talking to customers. They might not be UX researchers, maybe that's you, but how can you get people together in the same room? Maybe it's a lunch, maybe it's bring coffee for everyone and have them talk and see what, if they share resources, what could come out of that. The other one is contact one of these data points. So if you did run a survey or know someone that ran a survey, maybe you have access to your usage data or you now do, find out who that person is, one of the data points, find out who they are, and then email them and see if they want to chat. We actually have tremendous luck sending emails out to our customers and saying, hey, we are improving our product. We're working on this feature or this like problem area. Would you like to talk to us? And people are happy to share their thoughts, share how they work, especially if it's a product that they love. Depending on your world, actually contacting your customers might be a little trickier. Also happy to chat about like the rules of engagement, but especially if this is something you're trying out, like maybe you need to talk to an account manager, someone who manages that relationship, but go find out who that person is. And even if you're not allowed to email them and contact them, maybe go talk to that account manager and find out some detail about them that you didn't know from just like looking at, I don't know, the last time they logged in or what feature they recently used. And then the last one is maybe before the next time you run an A/B test or you put something live. I think A/B test is just such a great way to try this and learn this. Before you put 2 versions up or multiple versions up, show some of your options to your users. So either in person, if that's possible to you, remotely, you can schedule Google Hangout, Zoom, Blue Jeans, and show them the different options and see if there's any glaring issues. Because sometimes an A/B test fails because of a really silly mistake, or sometimes there's so much just, maybe you have 5 options and you can't figure out how to narrow it down to the 2 that you want to use in an A/B test. This is also actually really effective afterwards. So even if you've run an A/B test recently and you can't explain why one did better, then showing the different options to your users is a really great way to start to learn the benefit, and then showing clips from that if you have it, if you've recorded it. Online can be a really great way to teach the company the benefit.
Yeah, one of the reasons why we put that one up there is a lot of the meetups that we go to, almost every time you hear the question, like, how do I know what to A/B test? Or I'm A/B testing like every single day, but nothing's changing. Where you can use qualitative both before and after, before just to actually form those hypotheses that you're trying to actually validate with your A/B test, and then after to learn more on why that segment won.
That's all we have for you guys. Thank you.
Awesome, that was great. We got some new terms, Vanderwarp. We're having fun on Twitter with that, and some other models. That's cool. So the way we do questions are, in order for it to get picked up on the video, you have to have a mic. So just only pick somebody who has a mic for their questions, and we'll run the mics. I actually have the first question. I usually don't start out, but this is awesome to see how you guys mix the qual and quant, even though you don't like those terms. And I noticed many of them were unmoderated. Can you talk about your thoughts on moderated versus unmoderated, and when you like to do moderated, or when you're willing to go the extra mile or go for moderated instead of unmoderated?
PM answer that?
Yeah, I don't know.
No, we actually mix it up a lot. So Brian was explaining how the unmoderated works, where we send out, like, basically user testing is like a survey company where there's a panel and you put your questions together and send it out. And instead of getting the results from the survey back, you get a recording back. And so for things where, like, we might go back, like the survey example, like we might want to go back to see the recorded feedback is great because we don't have to take the time to dig in. Recorded feedback is also really, really nice when you know exactly what questions you have. Whereas the like live conversation interview is like a free form. Like I don't actually know what we're getting myself into. Like I maybe know that you answered a survey this way, or I know from analytics that you're this kind of user, but I don't know what questions. Like for the live conversation, like the flow chart that we showed the analytics, we didn't know what would happen going into those conversations. And so it's really hard to structure an unmoderated test. And then we'll pick live conversation. Sometimes it's also resourcing and time. It's like, do we have time to get a little bit of feedback? We can like set up a shorter recorded test and like analyze that later. Or we'll do both in one study.
All right, so if you have a question, raise your hand. Here we go. Cool.
Yeah. So yeah, my question is, I can't imagine you guys always agree product and product insights always agrees. Like what happens when there's a disagreement? And like, how do you guys go about solving that? Because that's something I've faced in my career as well as day to day.
I guess at a high level, that's kind of why you have data. We try to listen as much as we can to it. A lot of times, yeah, like we've got some user testing teams in front here, and sure every day, like we have disagreements as far as like what it is that we should go and do next. One, again, going back to the org structure piece, is having stakeholders across all of those, having them go through everyone. So that I shared that the product development process, right? Whether you're design, product marketing, obviously product, everyone plays a role in each of those phases. So everyone is going through and empathizing together. That makes those conversations easier.
I think a big struggle, and I don't even think that's so much like product or product insights or one, but it's like, when do we not need data? Like sometimes our gut is also good and we want to move fast. And I still struggle with that. And like when, like all of this is great and it's awesome if you have time to do this, but when is it actually necessary? And I don't have an answer. But sometimes there's a little bit of like, and this happens also with design, like any of our partners. And it's like, well, okay, this is not a great, like, and we've said this, like we've actually from Product Insights said we shouldn't research this because it's not a good use of anyone's time, nor do we think you should. Like even in our like empowered teams where people can go do research, it's like this doesn't seem like a worthwhile thing to collect any data. Or sometimes like, oh, it would be really nice if we could go back and forth through some of these cycles, and it's just not worth it for the impact that we think this question is going to have, or the answer will have. Yes.
Yeah, this is related to the jobs to be done testing, right? So let's say you're creating a MVP for an adjunct product within your company. Is the testing going to be questions about the products within your company, or do you expand out to the whole entire category and ask those questions?
That's a great question. So we do adopt jobs to be done, and we actually try to build our products as such. And what I mean by that is each of our products are solving a separate job. And when you're doing research, there's different jobs that you're trying to do. They actually map pretty well to those phases. Like there's a job of trying to understand. There's a job of trying to design and solve something. So we try to map our products along those different jobs. So it's not at the highest level. It's really sort of generally within the lower level.
So my question was, you mentioned the concept of milestones and kind of used that in the past, but is your milestone length variable? And if so, does that dictate whether you front load it with prototype testing first or go with an A/B test in production? You know, because Agile's about the quick turnaround and value to the customer. So how do you decide where to spend and how much is too much time up front or too little time up front?
Yeah, they do vary. It could be days to weeks to months. Generally, anything that is more than, I'd say, roughly like 2 months is sort of when you start to question, hey, is there a way that we can break this down? Because again, like what you mentioned, you're trying to get to customer value as quickly as possible. So there isn't really like a magic number, but I say generally, if we're not getting customer feedback within 2 months, like I get a little bit antsy.
There's a question here.
Yeah. In one slide, I remember in the organization structure, the user researcher is partnership with data scientist. It's super interesting. My question is, what kind of role this data scientist play in the whole process? Because the reason why I ask that is that, as far as I know, data scientists are always like clean data to feed the model, to like train the model for some machine learning feature. So, but here it seems like the data scientist's role is similar to like data analytics, right? So I'm just curious about that.
Or I think this term is from LinkedIn. They call it decision science. They actually have the same people with the same skill set. And data science is actually still kind of new. It's like people who can do statistics and program. And there's like the research side of data science, and then there's the building data products. And the data scientists we've hired all want to do research. One of the questions we are now having is that we have all this amazing data. We have done some predictive modeling, especially around like what, we also have a score to predict whether or not a customer will renew. And that was a machine learning model. And then we have lots of, like, we know so much about our customers, like we could do smarter features, like what types of studies should you run next, or what tasks to ask, or what questions to ask, or like we could do more with that, and we haven't done a whole lot of that. And so I think there's a little bit of like, do we hire new kinds of data scientists? But the data scientists we hire they do want to do some of that, but they don't want to build data products. And the data products would live somewhere else. We do have data engineering, like I mentioned on the team. Part of that is just like, she reports into our engineering org, like management wise, but she's on our team to know why she's like cleaning up the data and getting all the data sources from around the company together so that she understands the context that it'll be used in.
Thank you.
Yeah. Over here.
Hi. Let's see. I have a kind of a two-part question. The first one is, you had talked about the org structure and referenced, let's say, Spotify and Airbnb. You know, is that kind of like the three in a box sort of thing, where you also have a researcher that's kind of aligned to that? And then secondly, and if you could speak in more detail around that.
Yeah. And
then secondly is, unmoderated testing. It's a lot more efficient. You get, it's a lot easier. It's less resource constraint, perhaps. How often are you guys, it looks like it's pretty mature, doing more of the moderated, usability testing, where that can be very much more involved and resource, heavy?
I'll answer the last one first. We actually don't do a whole lot of usability testing. Like we're doing, especially like, we're not. When we do usability testing, it's mostly prototype testing. That one we'll do moderated because of the fidelity of the prototype. We then don't have to worry too much about making sure, if you do an unmoderated prototype test, you have to make sure that the prototype like actually helps people get through it. It's possible. Anthony's laughing. The pain, the frustration. Oh, this. So moderated prototype testing is really nice and easy. We do, I think, for the like moderated or unmoderated, a little bit of just like what questions does the team have? What are they like? Where are they? Do they have a researcher embedded that can help with it? Some of it's personal preference. Like some of our designers really like talking to customers. Some would rather watch the recorded feedback.
Yeah, I'd add to that pretty much kind of what you said at the end, where while some of our designers do moderated, most of them actually prefer unmoderated. And the reason is not necessarily because they're shy, but because the questions that they're trying to get answered, like you can actually do through unmoderated. It's like, hey, this or this, or that or this. Where, say for me, for example, I actually generally skew more towards doing the live conversation because I personally like to be involved in like defining those customer needs and hearing their stories and being very ad hoc with the conversation. Yeah.
And then the Airbnb and Spotify examples was actually specifically, they've written some blog posts about this, specifically about data science and UX research. So I actually don't know how they have structured their larger product team and what their process is like, but specifically like bringing those two like functional groups together.
Yeah. Three-part question real quick. question number one is, what number of personas do you typically map to when you generate surveys? What is the number of personas that you're generating surveys for? Three, 5,
No,
12?
no, it's actually, I really don't know how to answer. Much fewer. Like if we're trying to understand it's usually I'd say two groups, like two different, we might want to find like different trends or answers in two groups, maybe 3 or just 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
Second question is, what about influencers? Do you look at influencer data and what influencers are saying? And is that a tool that you use at all, or is it not even something in the cards?
Just to be clear, what influencer data means.
Well, I work in the life science industry with pharmaceuticals. We have what's called key opinion leaders, and they're defined by their rate of publishing. We have quant data. We have quantitative data on what is being published, how often is it published, and we have what's called citation analytics that determine their influence in the industry. So there's other factors, but just wondering if you use influencers at all to shape or influence your
I'm trying to think
strategy.
Think through like the equivalent or the analogy of like so.
We tell our customers to, like for the industries our customers are in, and how to marry like what we as a company and product offer, and how you would marry that with like a Forrester report. But we personally, I think that's maybe what you're thinking about, like what the competitive space is, and if there's like an analyst report. I don't.
So I'd say it's one of the variables to a decision, because I think one of the benefits of adding weight to what influencers say is they're influencing people, so they're seeing like the future, or they're defining the future. And when you are trying to build product, generally you are trying to be innovative or game changing in some kind of way. It's not the only variable, right? I think it helps define potential hypotheses that you have again, that you want to validate and make sure that what they are saying is actually true out in the industry. That's probably how I would use that.
The last one was, so what particular specific types of quant data are you using today to listen to your customers? What type of quant data or quant tools are you using today to listen to your customers?
Yeah. I can list a few. Do you want to list a few?
Yeah, go for it.
So the typical usage data, just data mining. We do A/B testing a little bit. We don't do it as much because, again, we're a SaaS company and we don't have like millions of customers.
Yeah, I feel like there's like a little bit of a gray scale between what some people consider quant or not. Like analytics is by far the most robust. Like we have that usage data, but we also look at support tickets and do analysis in support tickets, and there's thousands, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of support tickets that we could look at and analyze. And at some point, the sort of like tagging of the support tickets becomes quantitative data that we're using to listen. We classify our customer feedback. We run surveys, sometimes really small scale surveys, sometimes much larger surveys. It's the ones that we have in that slide, like with the different methods. Yeah, I can.
Oh, sorry.
We're all one more behind. Yeah, there you
go. This one. Yeah, maybe another one that's like quant, depending on how you do it. The information architecture tests that just are listed as info arc tests, like tree testing, card sorting. Like I've used that as a qualitative tool. Like it's nice to have people structure something, but I'm actually way more interested in what is hard about, like, so card sorting, you have people group like objects to them or like topics to them into groups, and the like pain that they feel having to do that is what I find interesting, but I'm a qualitative researcher. But you can make that quantitative. Yeah. Yes, over here.
Hi. Okay. I I'm glad you brought this up because I have a question about this diagram. So you mentioned that you have squads of a product lead, a tech lead, and a design lead. And I'm just curious, at what point is the whole squad involved in this whole process? Or are you pulling people in at different points of it? I'm just curious about like the collaboration in this flow.
Yep. So yeah, it definitely depends on at a high level, yeah, every single person that you mentioned is involved in some way, shape, or form. Depending on the phase, one might be more involved than the other. So for example, like during the understand phase, we found it's super valuable to still have the tech lead be part of that phase, just again, because anytime every single person on your team can empathize with the customer, like that helps with everything. But it's generally who's more involved with that. It's the PM or someone from product insights. For solve, like that's really like where the designer like comes in and starts to design and test things there. So yeah, and then building is when
Some of this ends up like with resource constraints, like we'll move people around depending on where we are. So the like ideal model, like we have whole documents outlining what these phases are and what we do. And that's like totally in the ideal world, like at least the tech lead, the designer, and the PM are involved the whole way through, but not every engineer. But if we know that an engineer will be working on something, we'll invite them. We do try to do this a lot, like invite them to customer interviews, like invite the whole squad to stuff, or like design reviews, we do that too. Like the whole squad's invited to the design review well before, even when we're like concept testing, like a landing page for like a pricing landing page is actually really helpful, like some of the empathy that you need in order to then go solve that problem.
And I'd say the role even of it's product marketing, where even getting them involved as early as understand and even involved in the solve phase like helps too. Yep.
Okay.
When you send out the surveys, I guess you're calling it unmoderated, you're just sending out the surveys. As part of your process is also included in how you design the actual survey in order to get the people to respond and feedback. And when you do that, sort of what's the most successful formats or design of the actual survey instrument do you find most successful?
Can I answer?
Yeah, go for it. Yes.
So we didn't talk about it, but because I actually use this. I'm not Marieke. I don't know how to design surveys like amazingly well, but you can actually get feedback on how well you've designed your survey. So I'll do a first draft. I'll get people to actually go take it and watch them take it. And by that, you'll understand whether you made sense or not, and then start to tweak your survey using that way.
Yeah. And then there's some like tweaks. So in the example that Brian showed, we didn't have everyone record themselves taking the survey. In that case, I wouldn't change anything about how you write the survey. If you are going to record everyone, maybe it's a smaller scale survey or maybe limited resources and you want a recording of everyone sort of struggling through the survey, then I would avoid like written response questions because there's no point in forcing them to write, because people's responses are always shorter if they have to write it out. And then you can just have them like verbally answer the question. But then like there's a downside there because you have to then go and watch what they say versus having the written response.
Yeah. One of the things that I am adopting more and more is always trying to introduce some level of compare and contrast in the survey. So that's why I love the jobs to be done method, is that you're comparing and contrasting all those different needs against each other. Max diff, if you know Max diff, is a really cool way of doing that too.
While you're on this slide, I have a question. As of today, what is the most important unmet need for your customers and what we can expect soon?
Oh, should we have Lee answer that?
I'd love to get your feedback on what it is. I can probably speak to this because like that is near and dear to my heart. So we use jobs to be done, as I mentioned, and so for us, the high level steps of the job is test preparation, recruiting your target customer, go ahead and actually like conducting the session, analyzing the data from that session, and then sharing. And there are important needs across all of those. Some of the top ones are getting insights as quickly as possible. So right now, you've got videos, and they can range from 5 minutes to over an hour, depending on the type of test that you got. Like, there's a lot of important insights within that time. How do you get those insights as quickly as possible from that? One that we've seen happen more and more often is a lot of our customers are big enterprise customers, and we're hearing this problem more and more often where the research team within these big organizations are trying to do what we're talking about here and scale research, so that you've got designers and PMs doing different types of research. And the problems that arise from that is how do you go about and actually scale that? So a lot of designers and PMs don't know how to test. So helping them know when it is they should be testing, what it is they should be testing, how they should be testing, that's another big one.
Yeah, and a lot of that is like, what are the right questions to write? If you figure it out, there's a lot of, even the studies I run, it's like I know that I've asked that question before, so where was that question when I asked it last time, and can I just copy that? And so sort of that mindset, both of like reusing what you've used before, but then also could I as a researcher say these are the list, like these are the 10 questions that you're allowed to use, and now I feel good by like with you going to do research. And so yeah, we're exploring some of that, which is an awesome segue to one plug that I have. So this is one way we've made it easier for our PMs and designers to do research, and for ourselves, a research team, is asking our customers to sign up to be research participants. Why I specifically would like you guys to sign up is that we're looking for PMs who do not use user testing. It's okay if you're a PM that does, but if you're a PM that doesn't use user testing, but you're intrigued by using it, I would love for you to, it's a short survey to fill out, and then someone will get in touch, because we're also working on a product targeting you guys, and would love your thoughts on that. Or just generally, if you don't have to be a customer, if you think it'd be fun to like give feedback and participate in some of the studies that we talked about. Great. One more, maybe? You can also, we'll hang out. Yeah, we'll hang out and we can chat.
That was great talk. Let's give you guys another round of applause here.